Please close your eyes. Inhale and exhale slowly and deeply. Relax your body. If you feel any pain or discomfort at any area of your body, bring your awareness to that area and mentally say, I let go. I am not the body. The body is just a vehicle of the soul. I am the soul. I am that I am. Visualize your whole body disintegrate and disappear. All the cells in your body disintegrate and disappear. All the pain and discomfort disintegrate and disappear. What remains is just brilliant white light. Inhale slowly and deeply. Exhale slowly and deeply. Now please bring your awareness higher to your thoughts and your emotions. Just observe each and every thought that comes to your mind and fades away. Mentally say, I am not my thoughts. I am not my emotions. Thoughts and emotions are just products of the soul. I am the soul. I am that I am. Visualize all your thoughts and emotions disintegrate and disappear. All your fears, worries, frustrations disintegrate and disappear. What remains is just brilliant white light. Inhale slowly and deeply. Exhale slowly and deeply. Now please bring your awareness to your crown chakra and mentally say to the Supreme Being, Divine Father, Divine Mother, to Grandmaster Chua Kok Sui, Lord Mahaguruji Mailing, and all the great ones, all the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, and spiritual helpers. To all the masters of Theosophy, thank you for all of your priceless blessings, for divine light, divine love, and divine power, divine guidance, help, and protection, inner healing and physical healing, good health and happiness, prosperity and abundance, spirituality and illumination. Thank you in full faith. Inhale slowly, inhale all the blessings. Exhale slowly and be aware of your whole body. Inhale slowly, exhale slowly. Inhale slowly, inhale all the blessings. And when you are comfortable, gently open your eyes with a big smile. Atma Namaste. Welcome to the last session of the book, The Astral Body. So let's begin. We already discussed about the astral entities human. Now we will talk about astral entities non-human, and after that artificial. Then we will talk a little about the powers and invisible helpers, and we finish with discipleship. Okay, so the beings non-human in the astral plane are elemental essence, astral bodies of animals, nature spirits, and devas. So we will discuss one by one. First, starting with what is elemental essence. So the word elemental has been actually widely used by different people referring to different things. Okay, but here what we mean is during certain stages of existence, if you have joined the book study on the solar system, we discussed about the 7 kingdoms. Okay, so from the monadic essence, there is like an outpouring, first involuting into matter. So we have the 3rd elemental kingdom, the 2nd and the 1st, and then we have the monadic, we have the, what you call the mineral kingdom, and then we have the plant and animal, human, and then we just go to the superhuman like that. So this elemental essence is still in the process of involuting. So it still desires to mix in matter more and more and to materialize basically. So the elemental essence may be classified according to the kind of matter it inhabits. So we have 7 grades of matter. We have solid, liquid, gas, and then we have subetheric and atomic. Okay, subetheric 1, 2, 3, and atomic. So these are the elementals of the medieval alchemists. They held correctly that an elemental, a portion of the appropriate living elemental essence, inherent in each element or constituent part of every physical substance. Now, these 7 main classes of elemental essence also gets divided into 7 subdivisions. So making altogether 49 subdivisions of elemental essence. Okay, based on the grade, means from the 7 grades, solid, liquid, gas, and so on. In addition to that, which we call it like horizontal divisions, there is also 7 perfectly distinct types of elemental essence. Now these are called vertical divisions. The difference between them having nothing to do with the degree of materiality, but rather with character. Now if you are familiar with the concept of 7 rays, this is basically referring to that. So aside from or besides the 7 divisions compared to the grades of matter, we also have 7 divisions which are vertical and is connected with the rays, 7 rays. So the student will be familiar with this classification as the perpendicular one having to do with the 7 rays. There are also 7 subdivisions in each ray type. So we have 7 rays, and then we have 7 subdivisions in each ray. Again, 7 times 7, 49. So we have 49 horizontal divisions. We have 49 perpendicular divisions. And so if we 49 times 49, we have 2,401 subdivisions of elemental essence. Now, as the element, like it's possible for the elemental essence to transcend from grosser to more subtle, so it means horizontally, but it's not really possible to change division based on the ray, or what is here called perpendicular or vertical. Okay, so that is basically elemental essence. So the elemental kingdoms do not admit of such conceptions as good or evil. Okay, so if you have done like in the pranic psychotherapy class, when we discuss about elementals, it's understood that elementals are like a lower consciousness being, but we don't say they are like evil. So in the elemental kingdom, based on the book, there is no conception of good or evil. Okay, but there is a sort of bias or tendency permeating nearly all their subdivisions, which render them hostile rather than friendly towards man. And actually that is humans' problem. We will discuss here why. As stated by medieval writers, this bias or tendency is due entirely to man's own fault and is caused by his indifference to and lack of sympathy with other living beings. So because humanity has been living their life, it's like not really considering the rest of the beings, not having sympathy towards other beings. So this elemental essence, elementals also, they appear to be like hostile towards human beings, and that is human beings' fault. So based on the book, in the golden age, a future to come, then there will be more, how to say, they become more friendly to humans. Okay, so it says, the animal kingdom will once again become docile and helpful to man instead of the reverse in future. It is thus clear that the elemental kingdom as a whole is very much what the collective thought of humanity makes it. So in future golden ages, as we become more considerate and sympathize more with other living beings, then the attitude of elemental kingdom towards humanity will change from hostile to be more friendly also, including also the animal kingdom. Okay, so that was the first class of non-human beings that we have in the astral plane. Second class is the astral bodies of animals. Now, this is an extremely large class, yet it does not occupy a particularly important position on the astral plane, since its members usually stay there for a very short period of time. Okay, so the vast majority of animals have group souls. They are not yet individualized. So when one of them dies, the conscious is like the soul goes back to the group soul where it comes from. So the monadic essence, which has been manifesting through it, flows back again into the group soul from where it came, bearing with it such advancement or experience as has been attained during earth life. So the animal has a real existence on the astral plane, the length of which varies according to the intelligence which it has developed. In most cases, it does not seem to be more than dreamy consciousness, but appears perfectly happy. Okay, so the animals that has group soul, when one of them dies, the monadic essence will straight away like go back to the group soul. It only remains there for a short time. But there are some other animals who are a bit more intelligent, and maybe they are like domestic animals who have already attained individuality and will therefore be reborn no more as animals in this world. So this group has a much longer and more vivid life on the astral plane compared to the other ones, which are less advanced. So such an individualized animal usually remains near his earthly home and in close touch with his special friend and protector. This period will be followed by a still happier period of what has been called dozing consciousness, which will last until in some future world the human form is assumed. Okay, so in general, animals that are less developed, less advanced, and they still have a group soul, they are not yet individualized. They stay for a very short time in the astral plane, but the ones that are much more advanced, mostly domestic animals who are much more intelligent, and like that animal life was the last one and they are supposed to become human, they may stay longer and their life in the astral world is more vivid compared to the other ones. Okay, and the last one, the third one is nature spirits of all kinds. So this class is so large and so varied that it is possible here to give only some idea of the characteristics common to all of them. So the nature spirits belong to an evolution quite distinct from our own. Okay, so we have this human kingdom, we also have angelic kingdom. So they are not in the human kingdom. It's distinctive from our human, evolution. Their only connection with us is that we temporarily occupy the same planet. They appear to correspond to the animals of a higher evolution. They are divided into 7 great classes, inhabiting the same 7 states of matter, permeated by the corresponding varieties of elemental essence. Thus, there are nature spirits of earth, water, air, fire, ether. Definite, intelligent, astral entities residing and functioning in each of those media. So at the head of each of these classes is a great being, the directing and guiding intelligence of the whole department of nature, which is administered and energized by the class of entities under his control. So these are known by the Hindus as Indra, who is the lord of Akasha or ether, Agni, lord of fire, Pavana, lord of air, Varuna, lord of water, and Kshiti, lord of earth. So the vast kingdom of nature spirits, as stated above, is in the main and astral kingdom, though a large section of it appertains to the etheric levels of the physical plane. Okay, so these nature spirits, as like the Hindus divide them, we have nature spirits of different elements: ether, fire, air, water, earth. So only based on the book, only the members of the air class normally reside in the astral world, but their numbers are so much that they are everywhere present in it. In medieval literature, earth spirits are often called gnomes, water spirits, undines, air spirits, sylphs, and ether spirits, salamanders. In popular language, they have been variously called as different names, like including fairies, elves, jinns, good people. So these are the different names that they are called in different languages. Their forms are many and various, but most frequently human in shape and somewhat diminutive in size. Like almost all astral entities, they are able to assume any appearance at will. Like as you remember when we discussed about astral world, we said that by will we can change our shape because there is no like physical shape in the astral world. So they can also change their appearance by will. Though they undoubtedly have favorite forms, which they wear when they have no special object in taking any other. Usually they are invisible to physical sight, but they have the power of making themselves visible by materialization when they wish to be seen. Okay? So their bodies have no internal structure so that they cannot be torn, they cannot be injured, and they neither has heat or cold any effect upon them. They appear to be entirely free from fear. Though tricky and mischievous, they are rarely malicious. Okay, so sometimes they trick, but they are not malicious, unless definitely provoked. As a body, they distrust man and generally resent the appearance of a newcomer on the astral plane, so that he usually meets them in an unpleasant or terrifying forms. Okay, so means in general, they are not malicious, but they play tricks sometimes. But if we provoke them, then they may become a bit, rough. They don't trust humans, and they don't like to see newcomers in the astral plane. So sometimes if they see some human in the astral plane, they appear to the human in an unpleasant or terrifying form. Okay, but if the human decides not to get frightened by them, then they soon accept him. And they don't really notice him anymore, him or her. And sometimes they may even become friendly. So one of their keenest delights is to play with and to entertain in 100 different ways children on the astral plane who are what we call dead. Some of the less childlike and more dignified have sometimes been reverenced as wood gods or local village gods. These would appreciate the flattery paid them and would no doubt be willing to do any small service they could in return. Because sometimes some of these nature spirits are worshipped as wood gods or local village gods. And because they like, these nature spirits who are being worshipped, they like the feeling, they like the flattery. Sometimes they accept to do some services in return for the humans. So the adept knows how to use the services of the nature spirits and frequently entrusts them with pieces of work, but the ordinary magician can do so only by invocation. That is, by attracting their attention as a suppliant and making some kind of bargain with them, or by evocation, that is, by compelling their obedience. So like in some of the magic ceremonies or like black magic, sometimes these nature spirits are hired to do certain work. So sometimes is by like a contract, you know, like they ask them to do something and in return, the magician should do something for them. Or sometimes is conquering them and making them obey the magician. Okay, both methods are extremely undesirable. Evocation is also exceedingly dangerous as the operator would arouse a hostility which might prove fatal to him. Because like if through certain practices or ritualistic, you know, ceremonies, if they not hire them, but actually like take them as their servant to obey them, so this will cause hostility, like the nature spirits will not be happy about it, so they become hostile and sometimes may have some dangerous, you know, precautions. So based on the book, no pupil or student of a master would ever be permitted to attempt anything of the kind. The highest type of nature spirits consist of the sylphs or the spirits of the air, which have the astral body as their lowest vehicle. They have intelligence equal to that of the average man. The normal method for them to attain to individualization is to associate with and love the members of the next stage above them, which are the astral angels. Okay, so the third class, actually the third class was nature spirits. The fourth class is the devas. The beings called by the Hindus devas are elsewhere spoken of as angels or sons of God. They belong to an evolution distinct from that of humanity, an evolution in which they may be regarded as a kingdom next above humanity. These devas will never be human because most of them are already beyond that stage. But there are some of them who have been human beings in the past. So if you remember when we were doing a study session on the book, The Solar System, there was a point when we said when the purpose for the humanity is achieved, so it means if the person has already achieved adeptship, holy mastership, and they don't need to incarnate anymore, then they have 7 paths in front of them that they can choose. And one of them was to join the devas, join the angelic kingdom. So that's why here says some of these devas have been human beings in the past. So the bodies of devas are more fluidic than those of men. The texture of the aura being looser, they are capable of far greater expansion and contraction and have a certain fiery quality which is clearly distinguishable from that of an ordinary human being. The form inside the aura of a deva, which is nearly always a human form, is much less defined than in a man. The deva lives more in a circumference, more all over his aura than a man does. So devas usually appear as human beings of gigantic size. Devas are often near at hand and willing to expound and exemplify subjects along their own line of to any human being sufficiently developed to appreciate them. Okay, so sometimes during meditation or sometimes during healing, you may have experienced or seen, you know, the angels coming to help. Though connected with the earth, the devas evolved through a grand system of 7 chains, the whole of our 7 worlds being as one world to them. Very few of our ordinary humanity have reached the level at which it is possible to join the deva evolution. Okay, so most of the deva kingdom have been derived from other humanities in the solar system, some lower and some higher than ours. The object of the deva evolution is to raise their foremost rank to a much higher level than that intended for humanity in the corresponding period. The 3 lower grade divisions of the devas are Kama devas, Kama means desire or emotion, right? So Kama Devas, whose lowest body is the astral. Rupa Devas, whose lowest body is the lower mental, and Arupa Devas, whose lowest body is the higher mental or causal. So mostly the Kama Devas are experienced in the astral world. For Arupa Devas and Rupa Devas to manifest on the astral plane is at least as rare as for an astral entity to materialize on the physical plane. So it means it's possible, but it's rare. Just like it's rare for an astral entity to materialize in the physical plane. Above these classes are 4 other great divisions, and above and beyond the Deva kingdom are the great host of the planetary spirits. Okay, so it is desirable to mention here the 4 Devarajas, though they do not strictly belong to any of our classes. These 4 have passed through an evolution which is certainly not anything corresponding to our humanity. They are spoken of as the regents of the earth, the angels of 4 cardinal points, or the Chatur Maharajas. They rule not over devas, but over the 4 elements of earth: water, air, and fire, with their indwelling nature spirits and essences. Okay, so these 4 Devarajas, they are basically the angels of the 4 cardinal points or cardinal directions. And they don't rule over devas, but they rule over the 4 elements and their nature spirits. Okay, so the names are in the table. Dhritarashtra, which appropriate point of compass is east. Virudhaka, south. Virupaksha, west. And Vaishravana, north. So references to them are made in the symbology of every religion, and they are always held in the highest reverence as the protectors of mankind. They are the agents of man's karma during his earth life, and they thus play an extremely important part in human destiny. The great karmic deities of the cosmos, the Lipika, weigh the deeds of each personality when the final separation of the principles take place at the end of his astral life, and give, as it were, the mold of an etheric double exactly suitable to its karma. So if you remember again from the study book of the solar system, we said that the lords of karma are called Lipika. So they, after our life on the astral world, when the consciousness is moving on to the mental world, they actually gather everything, and then it's like they calculate and see what are the karma, and then all of this becomes like seeds and remain in the atomic level of the astral world. And what you call, when in the next birth we are incarnating, they come with us like seeds, okay? And there is a possibility for this seed to manifest at any point. So that's why the life of a child is very, very important. Means the parents and the teachers and the environment, especially when we are child, is very, very important. So these seeds may remain as seeds if they are negative, if the family and the environment doesn't create any opportunity for them to flourish. But if the environment and the family, doesn't know about all of this and create certain environment for the seeds to materialize, then the seeds will actually come back again, something like that. So there must really be 7, not 4 Devarajas, but outside the circle of initiation, little is known as less may be said concerning the higher 3. Okay, so we talked about 4 Devarajas, but basically they are 7. And because 3 of them are like not in the circle of initiation, like a little is known about them, and so it's better not to talk about them. So the next class which exists in the astral world are the astral entities artificial. So we discussed about human, non-human, and now artificial. These are elementals formed unconsciously, elementals formed consciously, and human artificials. So we discuss one by one. First one, elementals formed unconsciously. The way in which these desire and thought forms are called into being has already been discussed before. The desire and thought of a man seize upon the plastic elemental essence and mold it instantly into a living being of appropriate form. So whenever we think of something, whenever we feel something, we desire something from the plastic elemental essence, an elemental with a form will be shaped based on the essence of the thought and the desire. Okay, now the moment that thought is disintegrated, this elemental essence will go back to that ocean. Now this elemental form will go back to the ocean of elemental essence. So the form is in no way under the control of its creator, but lives out a life of its own, the length of which is proportional to the intensity of the thought which created it, and which may be anything from a few minutes to many days. And if we keep repeating the thought, the lifespan increases. So these are the elementals formed unconsciously. But there are also elementals formed consciously. This is number 2. It is clear that elementals formed consciously by those who are acting deliberately and know precisely what they are doing may be enormously more powerful than those formed unconsciously. Occults of both white and dark schools frequently use artificial elementals in their work, and few tasks are beyond the powers of such creatures when scientifically prepared and directed with knowledge and skill. One who knows how to do so can maintain a connection with his elemental and guide it, so that it will act practically as though endowed with the full intelligence of its master. Okay, so like in Kriya Shakti, we are consciously creating thoughts, like thought forms. We are consciously creating elementals with our thought, with a certain purpose. Okay, so that is the science of using the power of the thought to materialize things. So that is one of the examples of elementals formed consciously, which can become very powerful and can materialize things. Now, what is human artificials? Okay, this is a very peculiar class containing but few individuals, but possessing an importance quite out of proportion to its numbers, owing to its intimate connection with the spiritualistic movement. The roots began during Atlantean times. The method adopted was to take some ordinary person after death, arouse him thoroughly upon the astral plane, instruct him to a certain extent in the powers and possibilities belonging to it, and then put him in charge of a spiritualistic circle. Okay, he, in his turn, developed other departed personalities along the same lines. They all acted upon those who sat at their seances and developed them as mediums. There is little doubt that the movement increased so much that it soon got quite beyond their control. It was soon found that it was impossible to make use of a spirit guide for any length of time without doing him serious and permanent injury. In some cases, such guides were withdrawn and others substituted for them. In others, however, it was considered undesirable to make such a change. And then a remarkable expedient was adopted, which gave rise to the curious class of creatures we have called human artificials. Now, what does it mean? Like, based on the book in Atlantean times, these masters of the white magic to create, you know, how to say, to spread the spirituality. Now this spiritualistic circle is like the circles that they gather together, and there is a medium connecting with the other world. Okay, so they wanted a spirit to create a spirit guide to guide the humanity towards, you know, spirituality, something like that. So they actually got one person from the death, from the people who have passed away, means they are still in the astral world, and then made the person in charge of this spiritualistic circle. Okay, so this was done for the purpose of helping the humanity at that time, but there was a problem with it because serious damage will be done on the person whose astral body is actually like taken and appointed for this what you call responsibility, because it will slow down their evolution process and they cannot easily move up to the heaven world and continue their evolution. Okay, so after some time they changed the person, but that was not working also. So this gave rise to the curious class of creatures we have called human artificials. Okay, so this is very rare actually, and it's not pleasant to the person, means to the spirit who has been appointed for this purpose. Okay, now what is this spiritualism that we are talking about? The term spiritualism is used nowadays to denote communication of many different kinds with the astral world by means of a medium. So by spiritualism, they don't mean like spirituality. It's like it is referred to communicating with astral beings through the use of a medium. So there are so many like pros and cons for this. So there are some people like Madame Blavatsky that say mediumship is not good at all and it's dangerous and it should not be done. But there are some of the Theosophists like Leadbeater who points out that spiritualistic ceremonies also have some benefits. So he points out that the spiritualists and Theosophists have much important ground in common. For example, one, that life after death is an actual, vivid, ever-present certainty. And two, that eternal progress and ultimate happiness for everyone, good and bad alike, is also a certainty. So, according to Leadbeater, although there is a lot of cons for doing these spiritualistic circles, but they helped in creating awareness towards number one, life after death. So if a person is very materialistic, through this use of spiritualistic circles by communicating with the dead, it creates this awareness of life after death. Means after death, life will not finish and it continues. Okay, and the eternal progress and ultimate happiness. Okay, because sometimes in some societies and some like very dogmatic, maybe religious societies, there is this idea of after death there will be like what you call forever damnation, and if a person does something wrong they stay in hell forever and things like that, which is very scary. So these spiritualistic circles will also shed some light over that, which is like ultimately everybody will be happy. Okay, so there is not such thing as forever hell or forever damnation. So, but based on the book, there is undoubtedly danger in spiritualism for emotional, nervous, and easily influenced natures, and it is advisable not to carry the investigations too far, for reasons which by now must be apparent to the students. Okay, number one is when communication, like when the medium is communicating with the beings in the astral world, most of the human beings who have been very good, human beings in living life, and they're already quite developed, they don't stay long in the astral world, and they just rise higher and higher to the point that they don't really communicate with the physical world anymore. So there is possibility that the medium will communicate with the lower, lower class, lower beings. And then even if we try to communicate with someone who is quite evolved, they are already in a position that they are not really communicating with the physical world. So it's like dragging them down again, which is not good for their growth and evolution. So it is thus an error to look only at the dark side of spiritualism, because although it has dangers, both for the medium and also for the people who are joining the circle, and also for the person that with whom we are communicating, but it has some good effects also, which we discussed just before this, which it creates awareness towards life after death and change certain concepts that many people may have accepted. It must not be forgotten that it has done an enormous amount of good in this kind of work by giving to the dead an opportunity to arrange their affairs after a sudden and unexpected departure. So another good thing about this is sometimes if a person has passed away unexpectedly and suddenly, and they have certain unfinished business, through the use of the medium, maybe they can give messages or they can finish the unfinished business, and then they can carry on with their evolution. Of course, a man who is really open-minded can learn a great deal on the astral plane. He may speedily acquaint himself with the whole of the theosophical teaching, and there are dead men who do this. Hence, it often happens that portions of that teaching are found among spirit communications. Okay, so basically, besides all the dangers, there are also some benefits that can be taken from this, spiritual circles. But once the person already realizes the importance of life after death and certain concepts are, rectified, then there is no need to continue with that, because there are so many dangers also, like both for the soul who has already departed, by dragging him or her back closer to the physical world and slowing down their process, their evolution process, and also a danger of communicating with some, energy vampires, as we discussed last time, like some elementaries or some, for example, the criminals or some people who have passed away because of suicide or sudden death, or like because of a crime they've been killed, and they need to extend their life on the astral world, and also because they still have a lot of passions and desires and they cannot really satisfy them, they may actually get energy from the medium or from the people joining in that circle. Sometimes they even follow the person who is in the spiritualistic circle to their home, and then they affect their family. So there is a lot of dangers with that, which is not really, that's why it's not really recommended. But it has a few benefits also in changing the conception of people towards life after death. Okay, any questions so far? It continues for us or for the one we communicate with. Can you please explain your question a bit more in the chat? What are you referring to? Thank you, Malar. Please explain a bit the question so I can answer. Thank you. So next chapter is development of astral powers. So first of all, the possession of psychic powers does not necessarily involve high moral character, any more than does the possession of physical strength. Okay, so if some people have some psychic powers, it doesn't mean that they are spiritually evolved, because these powers can actually be gained through certain practices. While therefore it is not true that the great psychic is necessarily a spiritual person. But it is true, on the other hand, that a great spiritual person is inevitably psychic. So it means as we are growing spiritually, we will develop certain powers naturally. So if a person is evolving spiritually, they gain powers. But it doesn't mean that if a person has certain powers, they are also spiritually evolved, because some of these powers can be developed through techniques. So psychic powers can be developed by anyone who will take the trouble, and a man may learn clairvoyance or mesmerism just as he may learn the piano, if he is willing to go through the necessary hard work. Okay, so all of these are techniques, so can be learned actually. Earlier you said the author explained that it continues for long when we communicate with them. Do you mean if we continue, if we communicate with the deceased, the people who have passed away, then the person who is passed away may, I said may follow the person? Okay, may. This is because some of these beings in the astral world, especially some of these spirits who didn't really live a good life, and if you remember in the last session, we said if they have really lived a terrible life, the connection between them and the higher soul may be cut. So we call these people elementaries, and to extend their astral life, they need energy. So they may suck energy from other people. And in some of these spiritualistic circles, if they communicate with them, if we start communicating with beings, so there's a possibility that these lower beings get attracted, because first of all, they need energy, and other thing is what you call, the ones who are more evolved may not be in contact with the physical world anymore that much. Okay, so these beings in the astral world may get energy from the people participating in these spiritualistic circles. Okay, or they may take energy from the medium, they may take energy from the people joining the session, and they may even, based on the book, continue staying with the people joining these sessions, and may to get follow them to their houses, affect their family and things like that. So that's why it's not really safe to do this. So that's why Madame Blavatsky really don't recommend it at all. But some of these Theosophy masters like Leadbeater and also say that although there are so many dangers involved, but this spiritualistic circles at least has helped to number one, create some awareness towards life after death, and also change some of the wrong perceptions of people towards this eternal damnation and eternal hell and things like that. Okay, does that answer your question? Okay, next, the possession of, okay, thank you. The possession of psychic powers that does not necessarily involve high moral character. Okay, this one we just discussed, right? So psychic powers can be developed by anyone. It's like techniques. So if people are willing to practice the techniques, they can develop certain powers. It doesn't mean that the person is spiritually evolved. But if a person is spiritually evolved, they should start, having these powers. So clairvoyance is often possessed by primitive people or by ignorant and uncultured individuals of more advanced races. This is sometimes called the lower psychism and is by no means the same thing as the faculty possessed by a properly trained and more advanced man, nor is it arrived at in the same way. So the occasional appearance of psychism in an undeveloped person is a kind of massive sensation, vaguely belonging to the whole vehicle rather than an exact and definite perception coming through specialized organs. This was especially characteristic of the Atlantean root race. It works not through the astral chakras, but through the astral centers connected with the physical senses. These are not distinctively astral, although they are aggregations of astral matter in the astral body. They are of the nature of connecting bridges between the astral and physical planes and are not developed astral senses in the proper sense of the term. Okay, so we have this lower clairvoyancy also, which sometimes primitive people or ignorant people and uncultured individuals may possess. But it's different from the higher clairvoyancy. Okay, so it's like using different senses to sense. It's like a massive sensation, actually, not really the ability to see astrally. Sometimes hysterical and highly nervous people may occasionally become clairvoyant also. Again, in psychotherapy, if you remember, there was this discussion that what is the difference between a psychotic and a clairvoyant? Okay, so clairvoyant has the ability to consciously or subconsciously open the protective web and see through, but a psychotic person sees through the holes in the protective web. Okay, so to know more about it, refer again back to your psychotherapy notes. So for those who have not yet developed astral vision, it is desirable to appreciate intellectually the reality of the astral world and to realize that its phenomena are open to competent observation, just as are those of the physical world. So there exist definite methods of yoga by which the astral senses may be developed in a rational and healthy way, but it is not only useless, it may be dangerous to attempt these until the preparatory stage of purification has first been passed. Both the physical and the astral body must first be purified by breaking the bonds of evil habits in eating, drinking, giving way to hate emotions of all kinds. Okay, so that's why in Master Choa Kok Sui's teachings, the higher clairvoyance course comes only after Arhati Yoga level 2. Because by then the person has already purified a lot of lower emotions and unwholesome, habits. And therefore, when this ability of clairvoyance is activated through techniques, then it will be beneficial for the person. Because if it's activated without proper purification and without preparation, it may not be really useful for the person. The person may misuse it. And also sometimes it will affect the life. I remember when many years back, when I was like 17 or 18 or something like that, I used to attend these classes and I had this friend. So the friend had another friend who was a clairvoyant by birth. And according to my friend, it was very hard for this friend of her to have any partner, because she could see whatever thought they create, whatever emotion and everything. So like, for example, she could see that the person likes another girl or whatever, it's like clearly the person was not ready for this power, and therefore she could not really have any partner, because she could see whenever the person is lying or thinking something which affects her. So with this power of clairvoyancy also comes a lot of responsibility to use it for the benefit of humanity. And also we should have a lot of patience, a lot of love, and a lot of higher emotions to be able to not to judge people and not to misuse it, but to use it for the benefit of humanity. Also not to be scared, because if we are not really purified and then we start seeing some of these beings who look a bit scary, so we may not be able to handle it well. So sooner or later, according to the karma of the past, the one who follows the ancient and royal path will find knowledge of astral phenomena gradually coming to him. His keener vision will awaken, and new vistas of a wider universe will be unfolded to him on every side. It is an illustration of the saying, "Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things shall be added unto you." So that is the proper course of evolution. It means if you are growing spiritually at some point, when we are ready, and these powers will unfold. The attainment of astral power as an end in itself inevitably leads to what is called in East the Laukika method of development. The powers obtained are only for the present personality, and there being no safeguards, the student is extremely likely to misuse them. So we see there are different methods of awakening them, but the safest is through meditation and spiritual practice, which we will come to it. Now, to this class belong the practices of Hatha Yoga, Pranayama or breath control, invocation of elementals, and all systems which involve deadening the physical senses in some way, actively by drugs, by self-hypnotization, or as among the dervishes by whirling, like have you seen how dervishes whirl in a dance, it's a religious dance kind of thing, until vertigo and insensibility supervene, or passively by being mesmerized, so that the astral senses may come to the surface. So all these methods are not really recommended. Okay, so the method which is recommended is through meditation. Another great, which is like through though slower, the powers gained by proper meditation. Now here it says like Raja Yoga or spiritual progress, belong to the permanent individuality and are never again lost, while the guiding of a master ensures perfect safety so long as his orders are obeyed. Another great advantage of being trained by a master is that whatever faculties the student may achieve are definitely under his command and can be used fully and constantly when needed. Whereas in the case of the untrained man, such powers often manifest themselves only very partially and spasmodically and appear to come and go. So the temporary method is like learning to ride by stupefying the horse. The permanent method is like learning to ride properly so that any horse can be ridden. The permanent method means real evolution. The other does not necessarily involve anything of that source, as the powers gained by it may perish with the death of the body. So means if through meditation, through spiritual practice, we develop the power of clairvoyancy, it is permanent. It doesn't disappear after death because we have gained it through spiritual practice, through evolution. But if this power is gained through other techniques rather than normal way of evolution, by death of the body, they will be lost also. They won't be permanent. So a trained clairvoyant being able to see a man's astral body, it follows that on the astral plane, no man can hide or disguise himself. What he truly is, that he is seen to be by any unprejudiced observer. It is necessary to say unprejudiced because a man sees another through the medium of his own vehicles, which is somewhat like seeing a landscape through colored glass. So it means if a person is clairvoyant and trying to look at another person, we should not have any prejudgment ideas, because if we have some other thought forms, then we look at the person through colored glasses, so we don't see exactly what it is. But if we don't have any judgments or prejudice ideas, then we can see what is reality. Okay, so until he has learned to allow for his influence, a man is liable to consider as most prominent in another man those characteristics to which he himself most readily responds. Okay, so this is explanation of the fact we just discussed. Okay, now the person who is clairvoyant should also have proper knowledge that sometimes what they are seeing is actually tricks played by nature spirits or other beings in the astral world, against which the untrained person is usually defenseless. Okay, so in the case of an astral entity who constantly works through a medium, his finer astral senses may even become so coarsened as to become insensitive to the higher grades of astral matter. Okay, so a good clairvoyant should be also able to differentiate between seeing the thought forms, as we discussed, maybe their own thought forms or thought form of other people, and seeing the reality. Only the trained visitor from the physical plane who is fully conscious on both planes can depend upon seeing both astral and physical planes clearly and simultaneously. Okay, so that's why there is a lot of training needed, and the person should be actually careful about what they are seeing. They may be tricked by beings in the astral world. That's why in one of the books, Grandmaster says, even very good clairvoyants can be only trusted, if I'm not mistaken, like 70–80% of the time. They are accurate. Okay, so there is a possibility of mistake. So another method of developing clairvoyance, which is advised by all the religions alike, and which if adopted carefully and reverently can do no harm to any human being, is that of meditation, so which is what we discussed. So like if you practice arhatic yoga, meditations and purifications regularly, there is a possibility that this clairvoyance ability activate gradually. And also in psychotherapy, Grandmaster says, if you do a lot of healing and always invoke for guidance, help, and protection, guidance for some people means clairvoyance ability. So it's possible that by doing a lot of healing and invoking always before the healing for guidance, help, and protection, the healer's clairvoyant ability activates gradually by itself. Okay, so this is about the same thing. Now, clairvoyance in space and time is the next chapter. Now, there are different ways that clairvoyancy can happen. Number one is by means of an astral current. Now, what does it mean? This method is somewhat analogous to the magnetization of a bar of steel and consists of what may be called polarization by an effort of the will of a number of parallel lines of astral atoms from the observer to the scene he wishes to observe. It's like creating a telescope from the sight of the observer to the place that he or she wishes to observe. All the atoms are held with their axes rigidly parallel to one another, forming a kind of temporary tube along which the clairvoyant may look. So the current or tube may be formed even quite unconsciously and unintentionally, and is often the result of a strong thought or emotion projected from one end to the other. Okay, so sometimes some objects is used for that also, like mirror, like this round, clear globe kind of shape, or glass, or still water, things like that, or crystal. Second one is by projection of a thought form. Now the problem with this one, the means of astral current, is we can only see the place that we want to see only from one direction. It's like you have this telescope, or you only see through that. You cannot see the whole seen from all different angles. You can only see from one angle. Second one is by the projection of a thought form. This method consists of the projection of a mental image of oneself around which astral matter is also drawn, such connection with the image being retained as will render it possible to receive impressions by means of it. So this one is like the person or the clairvoyant who wishes to see a certain scene create a thought form of himself or herself in that space and then look through that. So the form thus acts as a kind of outpost of the consciousness of the seer. So it's like looking through that thought form. And with this is a possibility to see from different angles. Such impressions would be transmitted to the thinker by sympathetic vibration. In a perfect case, the seer is able to see almost as well as he would if himself stood in the place of the thought form. So when the clairvoyant creates a thought form of himself or herself in that place, it's like as though the clairvoyant has actually gone to that place and is present and is looking at the environment, something like that. So in this method, it is possible also to shift the point of view if desired. Clairaudience is perhaps less frequently associated with this type of clairvoyance than the first type. So the first type can also be done with clairaudience, means the person can hear voices in that area or environment. So the moment that the intentness of the thought fails, the whole vision is gone. So the problem with this one is the clairvoyant should have a very clear, concentrated thought. And the moment that concentration is gone, that intent is gone, the thought form disintegrates and the clairvoyant cannot see anymore. So this type of clairvoyance is rarer than the first type because of the mental control required and the finer nature of the forces employed. And it's hard, so it is tedious except for quite short distances because the clairvoyant should keep creating that thought form and be concentrated on it and intend to have that. Okay, now number 3 is by astral traveling. So if a person also travel with the astral body to a certain place, either in sleep or in trance or actually consciously, then the person can be able to see, is able to see that environment astrally, okay, which we discussed previously. Number 4 is by traveling in the mental body, which is higher. This is usually done by the adepts and their students. Okay, in this case, the astral body is left behind with the physical, and if it is desired to show oneself on the astral plane, a temporary astral body is formed. Okay, so this is a higher level. Probably only adepts and their students can do this. It's higher than the astral traveling. Okay, sorry, one more thing. It is possible also to obtain information regarding events at a distance by invoking or evoking an astral entity, such as a nature spirit, and inducing or compelling him or her to undertake the investigation. This, of course, is not clairvoyance, but magic. So if you remember just earlier in this session, we discussed about nature spirits that sometimes through the use of magic, they are, like, let's say, hired to do certain tasks. So this is one of them. So this nature spirit may be hired to investigate to investigate something, or to like go and have a look at a certain environment or certain incident and bring the knowledge back to the person who is sending them. Okay, any question? I think we are two chapters left. One is invisible helpers and the other one is discipleship, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so who are these invisible helpers? Have you heard about the stories that, you know, like in a very horrifying accident, suddenly someone was saved miraculously, or a child was saved from fire, or things like that. So these invisible helpers can actually come and help humanity. They can even physicalize sometimes to help in certain ways. Okay, now the student of the preceding pages will by now have perceived that the instances of intervention in human affairs by invisible agents, which occur from time to time, and which are of course quite inexplicable from the materialistic standpoint, may readily be explained rationally and simply by one who understands something of the astral plane. You know, sometimes these interventions, they appear as like miracle to people who doesn't have the knowledge, and it's very difficult to explain them, you know, for a person who is materialistic. But for a person who knows about the astral plane and its possibilities, it can be rational and it can be simply explained. Now, in the East, the existence of invisible helpers has always been recognized. Even in Europe, we have had the old Greek stories of the interference of gods in human affairs, like in Roman legends and things like that. There are a lot of stories where invisible helpers came and helped people, sometimes even in certain wars or in some, I don't know, incidents or things like that. Or when a person was traveling, for example, they came and helped the person. Okay, now who are these invisible helpers? So some of them are nature spirits, although we say they usually are hostile to human, but sometimes they may become friendly and help also. Now, they don't really like humans because of lots of lower emotions that humanity creates, and also a sense of unrest. But there is a possibility that they come and help also. Sometimes they become friends to some of the humans who especially have more higher emotions, happy feelings and things like that. Worry and depression, not good at all. The work of the adept or master lies chiefly upon the arupa levels of the mental plane, where he may influence the true individualities of men and not the mere personality, which is all that can be reached in the astral or physical world. It is seldom, therefore, that he finds it necessary or desirable to work on a plane so low as the astral. The same consideration applies to devas, those of this class of entity who sometimes respond to man's higher yearnings or appeals, working on the mental plane rather than on the astral or physical, and more frequently in the periods between incarnations than during physical existence. Okay, so sometimes there are some adepts or masters who actually appear as invisible helpers, and sometimes devas, but they don't usually go down to the level of astral. The levels are in the mental plane. Okay, so chiefly upon the arupa levels of the mental plane. Okay, but it's possible for them to help, especially sometimes if the person has higher yearnings and like unselfish, what you call purposes, so they may help. By far the largest and more important part of the work is connected with humanity in some way or other, chiefly with the spiritual development, though very rarely even purely physical assistance may be given. Okay, so if you remember, there is a quote by Grandmaster that when you appear in groups, the higher beings are forced to appear. So especially when we gather in groups and we want to meditate for the benefit of humanity, then these invisible helpers are forced to appear and help. If you have done, if you have conducted intro talks, for example, it has happened several times to me and some other people I know. Sometimes when there is a talk and then you want to promote pranic healing and grandmaster's work. So you go and give a talk, and then towards the end we usually ask who has a simple pain, who wants to volunteer, so that we can show and demonstrate how healing works. So although we say like simple pain, usually people who raise the hand, when you ask them, okay, how long do you have this pain, they say like 5 years, 10 years. And sometimes I think, is it possible with few minutes of just cleaning that affected part, will they really feel relief? But through the help of invisible helpers, even few minutes of cleaning only that affected part, although the person had a chronic pain for 5 years or 10 years, they feel immediate relief. And this is because some spiritual work is being done. So we just need to, based on my experience so far in this, spreading pranic healing in Malaysia, in Vietnam, in different countries, we just need to be available. Okay, the higher beings will work through us. We just need to be available to do the work. And as Grandmaster says, what is difficult for an ordinary person is possible through the blessings of God and the spiritual teacher. So when we make ourselves available and then we want to do some spiritual work, there will be some help coming from the invisible helpers, as we see here. The book clearly says this is chiefly with the connected with spiritual development, and especially for the benefit of humanity. So there is no mystery as to the qualifications needed by one who aspires to be a helper. To some extent, these have already been incidentally described, but it may be useful also to set them out fully. Okay, now, everyone can become an invisible helper. There are actually so many people who need help. Especially, there are so many people who passed away without any knowledge about the astral world, and they're like traumatized and they need a lot of help. There are lots of wrong perceptions that need to be altered. There are so many people who have lots of grief, for example, because after death, they know exactly what they have done, without flattering, without anything. It's like looking at a mirror. So sometimes they have so much of guilt feeling, so much of grief, and they need help. Like sometimes these invisible helpers help them by saying like, it's okay, past is the past, just focus on the future, let go, carry on. Or if there are some wrong perceptions about eternal, like hell or things like that, they try to explain that such thing doesn't exist. Everything goes back to heaven and continues like that. So there is a lot of help needed. And based on the book, anybody can become an invisible helper. But there are certain qualifications that the person needs to develop. Number one is one-pointedness, or what the book says, single-mindedness. So this means for the invisible helpers, the work of helping others should be the first priority, the highest duty. The work which the master would have him do must be the one great interest of his or her life. It is also essential that the student should on the physical plane do the utmost that lies in his power to further the same great ends of helping his fellow. Okay, so first thing is one-pointedness. So if a certain responsibility is given, the person needs to make that his or her priority. Number two, self-control. This comprises complete control of temper, so that nothing seen or heard can cause real irritation. For the consequences of such irritation would be far more serious on the astral than on the physical plane. If a man with fully awakened faculty on the astral plane were to feel anger against a person on that plane, we would do him serious and perhaps fatal injury. Any manifestation of irritability, excitement, or impatience in the astral world would at once make a helper a fearsome object, so that those whom he wished to help would fly from him in terror. Now, there was one example in the book that there was this person who became an invisible helper, and then she wanted to help someone in the astral world because she had lots of excitement. that emotion made her look like a fiery ball, something like that, with extreme, like very vivid, bright colors. So when the person whom she wanted to help saw her in that shape, he actually got afraid. It's like traumatized. And then he was running away from her. But because she wanted to help her, she was running after him, which made him even afraid more. So that's why if you have joined the previous book on thought forms, even in the earlier sessions of this book itself, we discussed about the colors and the shapes that different feelings and different thought forms create. So if the person who is an invisible helper shows irritability, excitement, impatience, that will make them look very scary to the ones that they supposed to help in the astral world. Okay, so that's why there should be self-control. All these emotions should be kept controlled. Okay, this was what I was explaining. A case is recorded when an invisible helper keyed herself up to such a state of excitement that her astral body greatly increased in size, vibrating violently and flashing forth fiery colors. The newly dead person she was hoping to help was horrified to see the huge flaming flashing sphere rushing at him, took it for the theological devil in persona, and fled in terror. His terror being increased by the would-be helper persistently following him. This is funny. Although she wanted to help him because she was appearing to be this huge ball of fiery colors, so the person who was newly dead thought she's the devil because of wrong perceptions, and then he was running away, and she was running after him. This made him even scared more. Okay, number 3, calmness. This means the absence of worry and depression. Much of the work consisting of soothing those who are disturbed and cheering those in sorrow. It is clear that the helper could not do such work if his own aura were vibrating with continual fuss and worry, or gray with the gloom of depression. Nothing is more fatal to occult progress or usefulness than worrying over trifles. The optimistic view of everything is always nearest to the divine view, and therefore to the truth, because only the good and beautiful can be permanent, while evil by its very nature is temporary. Okay, so that's why there should be a feeling of calmness, serenity, joyous, not depression, not worry. Because if a person really, truly believes in God and the divine, they know that only what is connected with the divine is permanent. Only what is what you call happy and divine is permanent. So whatever is evil, whatever is worrisome, depressive things, everything is temporary, will disintegrate. So in that case, and everything goes back to the divine. So if we have that kind of thought, it causes calmness, serenity, joyfulness, blissfulness. As stated previously, depression is exceedingly contagious and must be entirely eliminated by one who aims at becoming an invisible helper. Such one would be characterized by his absolute serenity under all possible difficulties. Because some of the work of invisible helper is, cheering the ones who are feeling sad, giving optimism and positivity to the ones who are feeling guilty or upset. So we should have these feelings first so that we can help others with them. Next one is knowledge. The more knowledge a man has in any and every direction, the more useful he will be. He should fit himself by careful study of everything that has been written about the astral plane and astral work in the occult literature. For he cannot expect others whose time is already fully occupied to expend some of it in explaining to him what he might have learned for himself in the physical world by taking the trouble to read books. There is perhaps no kind of knowledge of which a use cannot be found in the work of the occultist. So it says knowledge is also very important. Before we become invisible helpers and help people in the astral world, we need to have the proper knowledge of the astral plane. And we cannot expect anyone to explain this to us because everyone's time is occupied with the work. So we need to spend some time reading the book, and attending such sessions like this is actually spending time in understanding about the astral world. Last one is love. This, the last and greatest of the qualifications, is also the most misunderstood. Now, by this love, it doesn't mean sentimentalism, just vague gushing feeling, which fears to stand firm for the right lest it should be stigmatized by the ignorant as unbrotherly. What is wanted is love strong enough to act without talking about it. So this love is not like when we see someone, we just sympathize with them and just say, oh, feeling for them. But it means active love, means doing something about it. It's not just feeling love for someone, but also acting. The intense desire for service, which is ever on the watch for an opportunity to render it, even though it prefers to do so anonymously. Okay, so when there is so much of love towards humanity, with this comes service also, because we want to be useful, we want to help others. So this is like desire to serve as well, because of so much love. So these 5 qualifications are needed for someone who wishes to be an invisible helper. And all of them are very important. Okay, last one. The chapter is on discipleship. So reference has already been made to the possibility of receiving training with a special reference to the astral body from a master of the wisdom. It is possible to add a little further information on the subject, which is one of a very great moment to the occult student. Okay. When a man is approaching the stage at which he will be fit to be accepted as a pupil of a master, the master may place him upon probation, which means that for some time he will remain under very close observation. So it means before a master accepts someone as his or her student, first they put him or her under probation. The master makes what is called a living image of the probationary pupil, an exact duplicate of the man's causal, mental, astral, and etheric bodies. This image he keeps in a place where he can easily reach it, and he places it in magnetic rapport with the man, so that every modification of thought or feeling in the man's own vehicles is faithfully reproduced in the image. These images are examined daily by the master, who in this way obtains with the least possible trouble a perfectly accurate record of his prospective pupil's thoughts and feelings. And from this, he is able to decide when he can take him into the far closer relationship of the next stage, that of the accepted pupil. So means, if a master wants to take someone as his or her student, first, they put them under probation. They make like an image of the person, and then they observe it daily. It's like whatever that student thinks, feels, acts is like reflected in that image. And the master observe it daily to see what are the general thoughts, feelings, actions of these future students, and to decide when he or she can accept this student as their student. When a pupil is accepted, the living image is dissolved and the pupil is taken into the master's consciousness to so great an extent that whatever the pupil feels or thinks is within the astral and mental bodies of his master. Should unfortunately a thought come into the mind of the pupil which is not fit to be harbored by the master, he at once erects a barrier and shuts off from himself that vibration. Okay, now why master first put the student into probation? Because when master accepts that student as his pupil, then it's like the person is in the aura, astral and mental bodies of the master. So whatever the student thinks, feels, affects the master. So sometimes if a negative thought comes, the master will put a barrier to shut off that vibration from his aura. So the effect produced by this wonderfully close association is the harmonizing and attuning of the pupil's vehicles. The pupil thus becomes a kind of outpost of the master's consciousness, so that the strength of the great ones may be poured out through him, and the world may be definitely the better for his presence in it. When the pupil sends a thought of devotion to his master, it is as though a valve were opened. There is a tremendous downflow of love and power from the master. The master's power flowing ever outwards and in all directions like the sunlight. So if you remember, Grandmaster says teacher is like the sun. So, and then there is an invocation in the Golden Lotus Sutras book that we need to, it's like an affirmation, we need to say, you are like a sun. What I need to do is to open my doors and windows to receive the blessings. So it's like, because when the student feels devotional towards his or her master, there is like this huge valve opens and tremendous downflow of love and power flow through the master to the student. The pupil is so closely in touch with the master's thought that he can at any time see what that thought is upon any given subject. And in that way, he is often saved from error. The master can moreover at any moment send a thought through the pupil either in the form of a suggestion or a message. Okay, so means when the master already takes someone as his or her student, then the connection will be so strong, the master can use that student as an instrument of him, and sometimes can also send a thought to the person as a suggestion or a message. An accepted pupil has the right and the duty to bless in the master's name. The use by a master of his pupil's body must on no account be confused with ordinary spiritualistic mediumship, as the condition is a totally different one. The highest form of spiritualistic control may possibly more or less approximate to the relation between a master and his pupil, but probably this is very rarely reached and hardly ever completely. Okay, now what does it mean? The connection between the master and the student is not similar to the connection of a medium with another soul, for example, or a spirit. Because when the medium is communicating with the spirit, the medium allows the spirit to talk or write or act through the medium. So it means the medium has no control anymore over the hand, for example, or over the body. But when the master is working through the student, the student still has full consciousness and observes exactly what is happening. It's, it's like different. The difference between the two phenomena is fundamental, the two conditions being as wide as the poles asunder. Okay, so if also you read Grandmaster Chakokse's books, when he talks about conductivity, when he talks about faith, when he talks about devotion, he says it doesn't mean to follow blindly, okay? And it doesn't mean to give up the willpower and to surrender. It means the person still has their willpower, but this willpower is used to work as an instrument of the teacher. But it doesn't mean to surrender surrender the will. This kind of conductivity which is even increasing the willpower of the student. In mediumship, a person is passive and lays himself open to the influence of any astral entity who happens to be in the neighborhood. When under the influence, he is usually unconscious, and he remembers nothing when he awakes from his trance. Even the spirit guide who is generally present is sometimes unable to protect the medium from undesirable or even disastrous influences. So you see, when a medium is connecting with an astral entity, they open themselves through any influence by them, and sometimes they're even unconscious of what is happening, and when they are awake they may not even remember what happened. But when a teacher is working through a student, the student is fully conscious. So when on the other hand the master chooses to speak through one of his pupils, that pupil is fully conscious of what is being done and knows perfectly to whom he is for the moment lending his vocal organs. He stands aside from his vehicle but remains keenly alert and watchful. He hears every word that is uttered through him and remembers everything clearly. So you see, there is a clear distinction between the two. So there is nothing in common between the two cases except that in both of them the body of one man is temporarily used by another. Okay, so the first stage of discipleship was probation. Second stage was acceptance, and the third stage is known as sonhood. So the third stage is one of even more intimate union when the pupil becomes a child of the master. The ego of the pupil is in the causal body being enfolded within that of the master. This union is so close and so sacred that even the power of the master cannot undo what has been done. To the extent of separating the two consciousness even for a moment, naturally before this stage is reached, the master must have been quite certain that nothing can arise in the mind of or astral body of the pupil which will ever need to be shut off. Okay, so you remember, first we said the master put the student into probation and just observe whatever feeling, thought, and everything the student is creating. Once the master knows that the emotions and the thoughts are pure and the person is ready, they accept the person as their student. But sometimes, occasionally, if the student still creates some negative thought or emotion, they shut it off from their aura. But in the third stage, the union is so close that there is no possibility to shut off anymore. So only when the teacher is assured and is like 100% sure that the student will not create any negative thought or emotion anymore that needs to be shut off, then maybe the teacher accepts the person as their child. So these relationships, probation, acceptance, and sonship, have of course nothing whatever to do with initiations or steps on the path. These latter are tokens of the man's relation not to his master but to the great white brotherhood and its head. All these matters are dealt with far more fully than it is possible or desirable here in the Masters and the Path. Okay. So if you want to know more, you can read the book The Masters and the Path. It may be mentioned that at initiation, the monad identifies himself with the ego. This act having an interesting effect on the astral body. A great rhythmical swing is given to it without disturbing the stability of its equilibrium, so that it is able thenceforth to feel with far greater keenness than before without being shaken from its base or escaping from its owner's control. Okay, so in the book, The Solar System, I think we discussed about initiation also, if I'm not mistaken. So every initiation is a stage of development. So like in the first initiation is when first initiation is done, when the soul has full control over the physical body. Second initiation, when we have full control over the emotional body. Third initiation is when we have full control over the mental body, and so on, like that. So pupils will be employed by their masters in many different ways. Some are set to take up the lines of work which were indicated in the preceding chapters on invisible helpers. Others are employed specifically in assisting the masters personally in some piece of work which they may have undertaken. Some are set astrally to deliver lectures to less developed entities or to help and teach others who are free temporarily during sleep, or who are living their after death life. So like the students of the teacher will take different tasks. So it can be like taking the task of invisible helper, or they may help the master personally in some piece of work or project, or they may give lectures. When a pupil falls asleep, he usually reports himself to his master. If there happens to be nothing special for him to do, he will pursue his usual work, whatever that may be. There is always plenty of astral work to be done. Sudden catastrophes, for example, throw out a large number of people into the astral plane in a condition of terror and in need of the help. So when a student is asleep, he or she will report himself to his master to do the work of the master. But if there is nothing to do at that moment, there is so much other work needs to be done in the astral world. So then the student may do some other work. For example, it says when any catastrophe happened, there are so many people who pass away, and it's like they go to the astral world in great numbers, and they all need help because they're in a condition of terror. So all of this, they need help with their emotions, and they need to gain some knowledge also. Most of the training in astral work is usually given by one of the older pupils of the master. Okay? So thus, death is life, and life is death. Another one is, whosoever pursues realities during life will pursue them after death. Whosoever pursues unrealities during this life will pursue them also after death. By death, nothing will change. The life just continues. Another of the symbols used in the mysteries was the Tirsus. I think we showed this in the book on the solar system. It's a staff with a pine cone on its top. Frequently, it was said to be filled with fire. In India, a bamboo with 7 knots is used. Okay, I don't have a photo right now, but I remember that we discussed this in the solar system book, so you can go back to that. Okay, the Southern Buddhists enumerate 5 psychic powers which may be gained by the man who is making progress on the path. Number 1, the ability to pass through the air and through solid objects, and to visit the heaven world while still physically alive. This may perhaps mean nothing more than the ability to function freely in the astral body. The heaven world mentioned being perhaps merely the higher levels of astral plane. Number 2, divinely clear hearing. This is evidently the astral faculty of clairaudience. So it means the person can hear voices. Number 3, the ability to comprehend and sympathize with all that is in the mind of the others. This appears to be thought reading or telepathy. Number 4, the power to remember former birth. This is clearly a faculty of the higher mental or causal body. And number 5, divinely clear vision or clairvoyance. In some lists, there is added also the deliverance by wisdom, which means the attainment of freedom from rebirth. This is clearly a very high attainment and scarcely seems to belong to the same category of the other powers. So Southern Buddhists, they talk about these 5 psychic powers, which can be gained when the person is progressing in the path. Okay, so a realization of his own true nature, of the fact that through life after life on earth, with interludes in other and subtler worlds, he is steadily evolving and becoming more and more spiritual. Logically and inevitably leads man to see that if and when he chooses, he may cease from dallying with life and with drifting on the broad current of the evolutionary stream, and may instead assume the helm of his own life voyage. From this point, in the growth of his awareness of things and of his own inherent possibilities, he will pass to the next stage, where he approaches the ancient and narrow path, upon which he will find those who, outstripping their fellows, have achieved the maximum possible in purely human development. These are they who eagerly yet with limitless patience wait for their younger brothers to come out of the nursery of ordinary worldly life into their higher life, where with their guidance and assisted by their compassion and power, man may rise to the stupendous heights of spirituality to which they have attained, and become in his turn a savior and helper of mankind, thus speeding the mighty plan of evolution towards its goal. Okay, so if you read that achieving oneness with the higher soul, it's like different levels of soul realization and eventually God realization is explained. So this reminds me of that, which is number one, just realization that we are not this physical body, but we have a soul. And then actually experiencing that we are not the physical body and we are a spiritual being. And then uniting with the higher soul. And after that is like uniting with the supreme, like God realization. Okay, first realizing the soul, the higher soul, and then eventually attaining God realization. So it's like the first step is to realizing we are not this physical body, and then actually experiencing it and move on. And after that, we become this servants of humanity who help other people also to grow, because evolution is a group act, is not individual. Okay, so this was actually a conclusion of the book. We finished the book on astral body. It took 6 sessions, if I'm not mistaken. And after this, we will move on to the mental body, which is also the mental world is known as the heaven world. And after that, there are some what you call recommendations and suggestions, what books to do. So we will decide based on that. But first, let's finish the mental world, because the mental body book, because that is also one of the very important books that gives us a lot of knowledge, especially in the spiritual path. Yeah, so after the mental body, we can also read the causal body and finish this. We skipped the etheric body in the beginning, but I think most of us have the knowledge about that. So, but it's good to read that maybe also at some point. So we will finish probably this series and then we go to other books. Hope you are enjoying the study session and continue with us. If you have other suggestions about the books or any suggestions to improve the sessions, please let us know. And thank you so much. Have a great evening. Atma Namaste. Teacher is Grandmaster Travels. Just an instrument. Thank you. Bye.